Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and I've got a thermal cinch project. So after my first look video where I unboxed and used this for the first time, I did a little bit of research and I've wanted to really find out about how you can get a glue-bound book to lay flatly. And as it turns out, I didn't know this at the time, but what I showed in the second book that I made in that video, it's actually called. It's very similar. I didn't do it quite right, but the concept of what I was trying to achieve was is actually a method of bookbinding called the lay flat, or I've heard it also been referred to as ODA binding. So essentially, it is a method for getting your glue bound, or it's called perfect binding, is what this is. And it actually should be able to help your books lay more flatly. And I looked into it a little bit more. I didn't quite see like a really good in-depth tutorial on it, and so I will endeavor to create one. And I got pretty close, not quite there, but pretty close. So I'm gonna try it again and see if I can get better results this time. So here's what you'll need. I am creating a notebook that is going to be 4¼ wide by 5½ tall. I chose that size because I can cut down US letter size paper and make full use of the paper. So you get 4 individual sheets for every sheet of 8½ by 11. And I did count this up, and I'll continue to count it as if I need to add more pages to this. Right now, this is 20 sheets of paper. That is not that helpful unless you actually know the weight of this paper. So this is very cheap, 18-pound text weight paper, 18-pound text weight paper. So not very expensive and not very thick. I do have one sheet, and you can tell the difference. This is digital copy paper, slightly better. This is 30-pound text weight as compared to 18. It's a little bit thicker. It's a nice bright white because it is designed for printing color. And so I've got one sheet of that. And if you watched my video, first look video, you know that what I did was I used this to actually do a wrapped cover, in essence, of our text block, which is what this is. And then I'll make the covers separate and attach them separately. So for my cover pieces, I am going to create my own binding. So these are gorgeous pattern papers from Printable Cuttable Creatables. And look at that. Isn't that cute? Both of these are from the same paper pack. They are digital papers, so you can print off as many of these as you'd like. And I have this panel cut to 4 inches wide by 5½ tall. And my back panel, I'm gonna trim this down. Right now it's 4¼ wide, but I'll ultimately trim that down to 4 inches. And I have an extra panel so I can make more notebooks if this turns out nicely. And then this bit of solid color cardstock is 65-pound weight, cover weight, 65 cover weight. And it has been cut to 5½ tall by 2¾ wide. 5½ tall by 2¾ wide. This is going to be our spine that wraps to the front and back. And I am going to also use my own glue strips. So if you go onto Amazon, you can get these. They're not that expensive, and you can get them in different widths. I kind of wish I had purchased 1/4 inch wide strips, but I'm gonna use these because I didn't realize, 1/2 inch felt like it was just better value for money, to be honest. That's that's what motivated this choice. But it's really thick as notebooks go. I think for these small size notebooks, 1/4 inch would have been just fine. They do come in these long strips that are about 11 inches, I believe. Let me measure real quick. It's 11 1/4 long. And so what I've done is I actually trimmed this to be, oh, I'm going to have to trim it some more because it just needs to run the length of your, I must have measured it wrong. So if the height of your book is 5.5, then you want to aim for maybe 5 3/8. So that's 5 1/4, 5 3/8 is around there. So you can use a craft knife. You can use a pair of scissors. It doesn't really have to be perfect, but the guillotine works just fine. And so you can get, at least from the strips that I buy, I can get 2 notebooks out of a single strip. And then I'm going to have to further trim that down because I'm not going to do quite this many pages. So, but those are the supplies we'll need. And then you'll want your thermal cinch. And so at the bottom here, there's a nice little mechanism for wrapping your cord around so that it keeps it nice and tidy. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in, and it will take a few minutes to warm up. So that's why I want to plug it in, and then there's a rocker switch on the side to turn it on. So I'll have that turn on and warming up as we assemble everything. So the first thing I want to do is I want to score my spine. So I'm going to go ahead and score this at 1. So this piece, remember, is 2 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to score this at 1 1/4. Yeah, 1 1/4. And then I'm going to rotate and score again at 1 1/4. And whatever is in between, that is where our glue strip will go. So if I fold this, it'll look like that. So that's going to be the spine where the glue strip goes. And then this will wrap around to the front, and that will wrap around to the back. But I need to put an extra score line. So from the inside, from the opposite side that we just scored, I'm going to score at 1 inch. And this is the part that I did not do before. And then I'm going to rotate and score at 1 inch. I did this for the first album that I made during my first look video using the We Are binding strips. But I didn't do it the second one because I just wanted to see if it was enough to do the independently wrapping the text block. And it wasn't. The proper way to do the flat lay is that you actually need to do both. So this is going to be our flat lay spine, essentially. And then we're going to put some, we're going to put this glue strip inside there, but I need to trim this down. So you heard that beep, and the light is solid now. And so that's actually ready to go, but I'm not ready. So I'm just going to continue working at this. So what I need to do now is actually trim this. And I am going to just use a steel ruler. Just be careful if you're going to do this, or better yet, just buy 1/4 inch if you think that's all you're going to make is thinner notebooks. So technically I can actually make 4 notebooks from 1 strip. So I'm going to aim just to get this in half. So I'm going to give myself a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch mark here, just so I have somewhere to start to line my ruler, steel ruler up against. And if you're going to use whatever craft knife you use, just make sure your blade is always super sharp, because you're less likely to have slips if you don't need to apply a lot of pressure to cut through anything. And it's always better to do multiple cuts than to push really hard, because multiple cuts with low pressure, you're less likely to slip, because you can control it better. So just get this cut through a couple times, and there we go. So I've got 2 strips, roughly 1/4 inch thick. And I'm just going to see which one fits better into my spine. This one seems to fit good. And you can see it doesn't go all the way to the ends, and that's exactly what I want. Because this will get kind of warm and melty from inside the thermal cinch, and then it will actually, oh, I'm not going to glue it to this actually. Oh, I'm glad I stopped. Okay, next what we need to do is, if you were watching the We Are Makers, you would normally glue your strip there, but we're not going to do that because we want this to lay flat, and that's going to prevent us from getting it to lay flat. But what I want to do is use this as a gauge to determine how much paper I can actually add to this. So if this is 20 sheets, I think I'm going to need at least double that. So I've got this cut in stacks of 10. So this is going to be another, oh, I think this is 40 sheets. No, I think it might be 20, 30, and then this will be 40. So I think that is probably good. So what you're looking for is when all of these get pushed down, so we want to have it actually be nice and flush, and then not have much of a gap between the top and the front. So I think that looks good. It could probably take maybe another 5, but I think we're gonna do 40, and that should be plenty. So, and I showed this in my first look video, and this part I did manage to get relatively, I think it works well. I haven't seen anyone else do this, but I think this works well. So I'm going to continue to do this for this method. And what I'm going to do is, because it's a small notebook that I'm making, I'm just going to have this slightly thicker, slightly nicer. So again, this is 30-pound text weight paper, digital copy paper. And I'm just going to score this at, it ends up being 4 3/8. I might have to trim a little bit, which is fine. And what we want to do is fold this and nice and straight, nice and square. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have this actually sit on one, either front or back, have it wrap around the actual thickness of my text block. That's what this is just a text block. And then I'm going to measure to fit, essentially. So I'm going to hold this tightly, wrap this around, and then pinch it wherever it lands so that I can then put a score mark there and have it be pretty much exactly what it needs to be to have a nice fitted wrap around all of those pages. And then we're going to glue our spine, put our glue to this section, not to the pretty spine on the outside, but to this. And here's the reason for it. It's so that you can get a softer glued edge, which helps it to bend a little bit more, because the thicker your paper is, whatever your pages are glued to, the stiffer it's going to be. So it'll be harder to actually flex and open up flatly. So once that's in, you tap it all down. See how fitted that is now? And then just need to trim this off at the edge. And so I'll make a little pencil mark and trim that off. I'm gonna actually trim it off in my guillotine because I get nice cleaner cuts. This blade is a little bit old, so it's not the most clean cut anymore. Okay, so there we have that. I've got my text block, and slip that in. And I'm just going to trim a little bit off on this side. It's not going to be perfectly flush. I wish I had a stack cutter, then I can trim the whole block once it's done. That's on my wish list. Okay, so now we're going to do our binding onto this. So the glue strip that I trimmed down, I am going to attach that to right between the score lines there. And this, the one that I bought, it just has little double-sided adhesive on these two, where these little sections are. It's not the whole strip. I think if you buy the We Are Makers one, the whole strip has double-sided adhesive. But you don't really need that because this glue is going to melt. And then you just need a little bit to keep it in place so that you can do the binding. So that's all we really need. And then on this, I don't think we'll need it, but if you're gonna use anything thicker than this, then you might also want to score an extra line. But now you could actually, if you wanted, just put glue here, but I'm adapting what the lay flat binding to a little bit to see if it just works a little bit better and we can get it to lay even more flat. So once you tap all of your pages down, and I think I actually might add some more pages. I'm going to add 5, so that's going to take us to 45 pages. 50 might be too many, but we'll see. Let's start with 5. And we'll see if that's enough to... No, I think I can go the full 50. So this is going to be 50 sheets of 18-pound text weight. And then I've got some clips. So you can see what we're aiming for is to get everything really flush against that glue. And once it's really tapped down, nice and flush, I'm going to clip it and make sure the other end is nice and flush. All of the pages are touching the glue. And then I'm going to clip it at the bottom there. And then add a clip at the top, just to really hold everything together. So now we can go ahead and put this into the thermal cinch. And I'm going to open, there's a cover, you just open that, slide this in. The only thing that is heated is the bottom plate at the very bottom. And so you don't have to worry about the plastic clips. Then I'm gonna push, there's a big button here. I'm gonna push that, the light's gonna blink, and when it's done, it'll stop blinking and it'll give a couple of beeps. So with that ready, we can now turn our focus to the cover. So one of the things that I did on the first one was I glued this cover piece all the way to butt up against the where the glue would normally go, and I'm not gonna do that. It makes this fold really stiff, and this extra score line here, that's actually what helps everything lay more flatly. So what I'm gonna do is put adhesive strips on this section, but and one of the things that I was curious about in that first look video was, why is there adhesive just on the outside edge and not like right up to the glue? And there was a reason for that, and it is to get your pages to lay a little bit more flat. So that is what we want to do. We basically want to keep this cardstock where the spine is and where the pages will be. We want to keep it so that it can go where it needs to go when the book is open, and that's what's going to help the book to lay more flat when it is open. So I'm just gonna put a wide piece of double-sided adhesive only on the outside edge. So this is gonna look very, very similar to the We Are Makers spines. So you heard it beep and it's now solid. So this is actually done. And you can sort of see how it is nice and melty. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these clips out. I'm not gonna open it. I'm just gonna take the clips off so that I can actually push gently but evenly. Because as I push, I can actually see that glue oozing all the way to the edge, to the outside edge. And it just makes sure that your glue is really getting into your pages. And so I'm not putting a ton of pressure because that glue is still warm and melty. So now I'm gonna clip these just to keep all the pages together still, so that it's, and I think it's good to clip it at the bottom where, because you don't want it to kind of fan out. But you can kind of see that glue oozing out a little bit, and don't touch it. It's probably hot, but if you want to use like something silicone to kind of tamp down, or even I'll just tamp it down a little bit on this end on my glass mat, and then have that be set there. And then we'll just put it spine side down, again, just so that the pages can continue to kind of sit and settle into that glue as the glue hardens up again and cools down. So you just put that back there. And I'm going to turn this off now because I'm just going to make the one book in this video. Now for my, now kind of depending on whether you want your book cover to be a little bit larger than your pages, or if you are fine with it being flush, that's what's going to determine where you actually glue this. But the idea is that when I glue this down, I'm just going, the furthest I will glue it is up to the score line, the second score line, the one that starts to bend out this way, so that when we open our book, you're still only bending through one layer of cardstock. Because if I glued it all the way here, we would have to bend through 2 layers of cardstock, and that made it really stiff. So I'm going to attach it like this, but I'm actually going to wait until my text block has cooled down. And it's pretty cool now, so I'll go ahead and, I mean, you really want to let it sit for like maybe 5 minutes, but it's a little bit warm, but that's okay. we're going to continue working ahead here. And so what you want to do is almost, if you want this flush, then just hold your cover flush, and you can kind of see how, because the glue has some dimension, I've cut this cover panel to 4 inches, and I scored this line at 1/4 of an inch, but there's a gap, and that's really the space of the glue. So a lot of this is kind of, you can make the measurements, but you really want to, if you want everything to kind of line up nicely, you kind of want it to be done, you know, to fit. So what I'm going to do is on this edge, I want everything nice and flush. So I'm going to hold it like this, and then I'm going to peel this off and wrap it around to the front. And when I just touched it on this side, and since that looks straight, I'll go ahead and wrap it around all the way. So then we burnish. And now, how do we get these two things to be attached to one another? I'm gonna glue this entire front page. This was the slightly thicker. This is what we used as our wrap with the glue and the binding. I'm not gonna stress this too much just yet because it's still cooling down. But what we will ultimately do is actually glue this entire front page to that front cover. And so what I'll do in preparation for that is I'm going to put some adhesive on the back inside front cover. I'm going to glue the first page of the text block in. And I'm only putting adhesive on the actual cover, not on the brown cardstock, not on the spine. And again, that's going to be so that this has some flexibility where the pages need to open up. And anything that you do with a perfect bound notebook, and that's what these are. It's called perfect bound, and it's what, you know, soft cover novels and books that you would buy in the bookstore. It's how those are made too. It's never going to lay completely flat, but you know, here are some things that we can do to actually help it to lay more flat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and glue the front part in, so that way we can then line up our back cover and it will be like perfectly fitted. So to start that, I'm just gonna peel off this outside release liner, and guarding it from touching that, I'm just going to line this up in the spine and then have it kind of flush to my glass mat at the bottom, and then line it up with the front. See how it's nice and flush? And now that we've got the one edge in and lined up, I can peel off the rest of the liners and stick down the rest of my text block. So just have it. So there we go. Now we've got our front cover in. Text block is attached. And now I can add my back cover. So my back cover, as I mentioned, I trimmed this, I was kind of on automatic and I trimmed it to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but really you just, I'm recommending that we trim these pieces just to 4, because it will keep the spine to 1 layer of cardstock, making it easier to open. Okay, so with this ready, you can do this a couple ways now at this point. we can take this and just go ahead and attach it to our text block. So I can put whichever way is going to be easier for you, whether you glue this onto or adhere it onto your text block, or you adhere it onto your spine first. But I feel like maybe this is easier to do. And we could have done this with our front cover too. So I'll just show it to you that way. And then you can kind of, if you're going to be making this type of project, you can maybe try it both ways and see what's easier. Attaching your cover to your spine and then attaching it to the text block, or attaching this to your text block and then wrapping your spine on. Up to you. Whatever is easiest for you. Try both and see. This is not directional, so that's the nice thing. I chose some of these papers from Printable Cuttable Creatables so that it wasn't directional and I wouldn't have to worry about that. The fewer things, sometimes with projects, especially when I'm just kind of experimenting with a new method, trying to figure out other complicated aspects of it, I like to keep things simple in other places. So all I'm gonna do is, I like using, the bottom of my glass mat because it helps me to line stuff up at least at the bottom. Square it off. I attach this to the back page of our text block. Right, and then I'll burnish that in. And now I can take this liner off, wrap this around the text block, and attach that to our back cover. So you have a really nice finish. This bends and folds really easily because we're only folding it on essentially just the one. I mean, it's really 2 layers. It's the little bit of copy paper and the cardstock. But you can see how at this spine, see how there's room where the glued edges can kind of fit, it can kind of nudge around, shift around and move. And that way your pages can actually, this can actually open more flatly. So you can see how wide this can open, almost all the way to the glue. But your covers can open nice and flat. You can open all the way to the middle. With a perfect bound book, you're always going to have that curvature. It's never going to lay exactly flat, but I feel like this helps a lot. And it also depends on how many pages you have. So the more pages, the more it's going to bow open and have more resistance here. And it also, the thicker your papers, the harder it will be to lay flat. But with this cover method, you can see the cover bends back nice and easily. And you can train your pages to also open and lay flatly too. Just kind of take a couple pages at a time. And you can do that from the front and the back. Train it to kind of fold against this score line that we added. And I think that looks really good. It works really well. The pages are well stuck. It's really secure. The other nice thing about using that copy paper as our spine to attach all of these pages is that it's thin. So the heating element at the bottom of the thermal cinch, it doesn't have to go through as thick of a paper as something like a cardstock. And so it can really melt your glue nicely. And then doing that extra step of burnishing it, I think helps to really push that glue into the papers, because you can kind of see there's a little bit of unevenness with the pages. As much as I kind of tap them all down, you can kind of see there's a little bit of unevenness, but the glue really shaped itself around all of those individual pages. And so that's why everything's like pretty well stuck in. This is a page out of the center, really stuck well. A page at the edge, nicely stuck. Here's another page at the very back edge, nicely stuck. So everything is pretty well secured in there. You can see all the glue really touches all of the pages. So I'm really, this is, I thought the first two books I made were pretty good, and I was really happy with them. But I like doing this binding. This is how I'm gonna be binding these books, because I feel like it looks nice as, you know, the cover having this little accent strip. Oh, I think I meant for this to be my front cover. So this is my front cover, which I think is adorable. Got the bees going in all direction. And then this is my back cover. It really doesn't matter. I guess you could do it either way, whichever way you want. But it's nice to have digital papers so that you can really just print off and make as many of these as you want whenever you need a little notebook. And it's not that, it's maybe a couple of extra steps to do the spine this way, but I feel like for something that helps make it a little bit easier to use, makes it lay a little bit more flatly and function a little bit nicer, well worth the extra time. And I'm happy with the results. I like it a lot. I hope this has been helpful. If you have the thermal cinch and you've been wanting to maybe make it in such a way that it will lay flat a little bit more easily, try this. Let me know what you think, if it helps. And if you discover more tips and tricks, please do share in the comments below as well. I'm always, I'm very new to this, but you know, I'm eager to learn more techniques. So do share. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks again, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.